Hello, I'm Robbie O'Daniel. I'm the editor of the LaFollette Press here with Eva Harinkova, the assistant editor of the LaFollette Press. And we're here with Bill Jones, who won the General Sessions judge race in the August election. Thanks, Bill, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Robbie. I'm glad to be here.
And so we want to take this time and talk to you a little bit about just in general, like your background and everything. We went through a lot of it during the debate and during the election process and everything like that. But I thought it'd be an interesting time for everybody to just learn more about you and your background and everything
Sure.
like that. Like, just take us to the very beginning. Like, if you're like, writing your life story or something at the very beginning.
Well, originally I was born in Hamilton, Ohio, which is just outside of Cincinnati. And that's where my mother's family is all from. And my father's family, where his mom and dad had left, they were all from Scott County, from Oneida. And they had moved to Ohio looking for work back a long time ago to work in the steel mills. And in 1988, when I was 10, we moved back to Scott County, where my dad was from, my family from there, and that's where I've lived most of my life. In high school, I went to Scott High. I started working for a company called Wabash that manufactured tractor trailers. Matter of fact, they were Fruhoff at first, and then Wabash, now they're Great Dane. And they built flatbed tractor trailers, and I worked in the engineering department, designing the trailers. And after graduation, I continued to work there, and I was going to school at Rome State to be a mechanical engineer, because that's what we had there. The department was all mechanical engineers. I worked there with my younger brother, Michael, was my only sibling. He worked in engineering too. I got him a job there when he came of age, and we worked together. He was about 2 years younger than me. We were real close. And we learned in 2000 they were going to close the plant down, and those things started happening. And during that time, it was actually in August of 2001, my brother was killed in a car accident. And that changed my life dramatically. I mean, it was obviously a terrible thing, and me and my family were in the worst place you could be. But it also made me look at my life a lot different. Up to that point, I always felt like, I was young and dumb and did dumb things. And I felt like I was invincible and just had all the time in the world, and life is something that'll happen later, and that made me realize that's not true. What we do now matters, and our time on Earth is limited. You just don't know how much time you got, and made me look at what I was doing with my life a lot differently, and I started wanting to do something else. Instead of being an engineer, I decided I didn't know what I wanted to do, to tell you the truth. And
How old were you when the crash happened? How old was your brother?
23, and he was 21. And it was right after work. We had just gotten out of work, and it was a downpour, and he hydroplaned in a pickup truck, and he collided with another car. And in the other car, there was an older gentleman who was also killed in the accident. And his family sued my brother's estate, which is just a normal thing. It was nothing out of the ordinary, but they did it in federal court, and we didn't know how to deal with it. Or my brother didn't have anything. He owed more money on his pickup truck than he had. But we didn't know how to navigate that system. And we had a family friend who I knew a little, but not real well. Was our General Sessions judge in Scott County. His name was Jamie Cotton, and he reached out to us and he helped us through that process. We were at the worst place in the world, and he helped us for no reason. He didn't owe us anything. He just wanted to help, and I got to know him through that time, and I was spending more and more time with him, and I went to watch him in court, and I saw how he treated people and how much patience he had, and how he talked to folks. And then I learned about he started recovery court there to help people with addiction. He helped found the Scott County Women's Shelter. He just did all these things. His whole life was just dedicated to serving the public and making it better. And I thought, well, that's what I want to do. That looks great. To me, that sounded and looked like a good career path. Not necessarily being a judge, but being an attorney. I was looking at practicing law, and Abraham Lincoln was an attorney. Gandhi was an attorney. There's all these people that I really admired who had done great things in the world. So I thought to do good things, being an attorney would be a good starting point. So I went to law school. Well, I actually applied to law school. When I told my family I was going to do this, they thought I was crazy. You know, we didn't have any attorneys in the family, and it just seemed like it was a dream. You know, my folks were like, "Oh yeah, you're going to law school, good. You know, go do that. Good for you." And then when I actually, you know, I get, I'm accepted and I'm moving to Birmingham, Alabama, it got real. They're like, wow, okay, he's really doing this. So I went to law school at Cumberland School of Law in Birmingham.
So, what was engineering? Was that like a thing that your family had roots in?
No,
no,
no. That's just something I had kind of stumbled into through the job that I got when I was in high school. I asked my computer teacher, Mike Lay, who passed away now. He was a great guy. I loved him. But I was really big into computer programming, computers. I loved them. And my computer teacher and I were really good friends. And I said, "Carl, I'd like to have a job for the summer." And he hooked me up with this engineering job. Because it was on computers some. You know, we drafted and we drew parts and assemblies for how, you know, to assemble a tractor trailer, where to put the welds, how to make the parts, the whole bit.
What year did you graduate high school?
96.
Okay, so we're thinking like kind of bulky monitor computers.
Oh yeah.
Maybe before Windows 95, maybe like Windows 3.1 or whatever.
I don't remember if we had 3.1. I remember having 95, and I remember getting email.
Dial-up?
Yes, absolutely. We had dial-up. And I remember at some point, I had already been working there for a few years. We got email addresses.
Yeah.
And I thought that was the coolest thing ever, because we'd always, you know, you talk to people on the phone and say, "Oh, I said this," and no, you didn't, you said that. And with email, there was a record of everything. And we thought email was just the coolest thing ever. So yeah, I remember all of that coming.
You're already thinking about proof in the court of law.
I guess so.
It's hearsay.
I wanted a record of what we were saying.
So you're getting into computers right when computers were really blowing up in terms of mainstream popularity. And
Yeah. You know, when my first computer I had was a Commodore 64, and you had to write your own basic programming to even play a game. You couldn't just pop it in. You had to write, you know, each line, start the game, whatever, and it had to end. There'd be 3 or 4 lines of code just to make the game start. And then we had an IBM. Was it IBM 2, I think, or something? But it, you know, it was DOS. You had to know all the codes and type in, copy this and delete that. And when Windows first came out and it was a graphic interface, I didn't think it would catch on. I thought, this is stupid. You've got to dig through all these menus. I know the commands. I just want to type them in now. Why do I have to dig through this stuff? So I thought, Dad, this is a fad. This is not going to. And of course, that was ridiculous. DOS went away, never to be seen again.
So where'd you go to law school, and what was that like? Was it, I mean, it's easy to just say, like, you know, I went to law school, I got my degree, but, you know, it's rigorous.
It was a huge change for me. So I had not finished mechanical engineering school when my brother died. Matter of fact, I was still at Rome State. And I had just been going slow, and I even thought about dropping out at times. But after that, I buckled down, and I was studying hard. I was taking classes at night, on the weekends through the summer, and I finished my associate's degree, and then I transferred to UT. And mechanical engineering was hard. I mean, it was really hard. It was much harder than law school. I tell people that. I don't know if people believe me, but it really was. With law school, they'll ask these generic questions. You can kind of hem-haw around and give big wordy explanations, and you'll get credit for it. In engineering, the answer is 37.5, and if you don't have that, it's wrong. You know, there is no sugarcoating it. It was when I was in undergrad, a lot of people flunked out. I mean, that was just a common thing. My grade point average compared to other people applying to law school was not that good. But compared to other engineering students, it was really good. You know, the fact that I didn't flunk out was a great thing. So when I went to law school, it was a huge change for me. And it was a lot of work, but I never felt for me that it was really difficult work. I had to read a lot, and I had to answer questions, and you had to be super prepared for class. And one thing they do in law school, they use something called the Socratic method, where the teacher will call on a student, have you stand up in front of the class, and then drill you with questions. And you come to class prepared out of fear of looking stupid in front of the whole class of people.
I could see that.
So it's peer pressure that keeps you on point. You don't go to class unprepared because you don't want called out. So they use that method a lot, especially your first year. So it was a very, very different atmosphere, different type of people than I was used to in the engineering world, but I really liked it. I took to it, and after my first year, I got a job in Birmingham with a sole practitioner named Carrie Spencer. I couldn't get a job, so getting a job in law school, an internship, is kind of political. So there's a lot of people there with big, long, fancy names, so and so Motlow the Third, and their dad's been an attorney, and their grandpa was an attorney, and they just get a job at the big firm, and so they're always pulling strings. And I didn't have anybody down there like that, of course. And I wanted to come back to Tennessee and be in private practice by myself. So I created a bunch of resumes, like a big stack of them, and I just printed out from MapQuest a whole bunch of attorneys that were in by themselves. I just went in and laid them all on their tables of most of the secretaries. I got to meet a few of them, and I didn't hear back from 99% of them. But one guy calls me and said, "Hey, are you the kid that just dropped off this resume?" I said, "Yeah." He said, "Can you start today?" I said, "Yeah."
Today? What time of the day?
Get here. This was Friday. It's a Friday afternoon.
Yeah, Friday afternoon.
Friday afternoon.
Well, what do you have you do on day one?
Well, he had filed for an appeal in a case, and appeals are very difficult to write. There's a whole bunch of work that goes in, and his deadline was Monday. Well, he had filed a continuance asking for more time. Generally, those are granted. He got denied. So he had an appeal that he had not started that was due Monday. So we sat and wrote on that and worked on that appeal all night Friday night, all day long Saturday, all day long Sunday, all day long Monday, and then took it to the post office, and he had it stamped postmarked by midnight on Monday evening. And from that day forward, I worked with him all the time. He took me everywhere. We went to courts in other counties and all in Birmingham. We went to Huntsville, all over the state. He took me to prisons to meet people, clients. It was crazy. Working with him was a lot of fun. So I had a really good experience in law school because of him. Really, Kerry Spencer. He was a really good guy.
So you interned for him in Birmingham.
Yeah.
And so what would you say? What were some things you really took away from that?
You learn things in a courtroom that you just can't teach real world experience. Life is stranger than fiction, I guess. We get these cases and the facts would be just bizarre. We worked on some really, and dealing with people, being an attorney isn't just knowing the law. You're dealing with human beings that have problems, and there's a lot of psychology that goes into that, to getting them to tell you what you need to know, to tampering their expectations. Some people think that they hire an attorney, you can just fix all their problems. Sometimes being a good attorney means you have to tell people bad news and convince them that this is how it's going to be, and you're going to have to live with it. So that was it. Dealing with actual clients, learning how to talk to them, to be kind and patient and listen, but also be confident and be able to tell them how it is. So and he did everything, and sometimes we get some silly cases. People want to sue over the silliest things. I learned some of the parts of the law I did not want to be involved in. Some of the frivolous lawsuits, and those exist. There's people who just come in wanting to sue anybody and everybody.
So were you doing civil law in addition to
Yeah,
criminal?
he did everything. He did civil law, criminal, you name it, contracts. He did Social Security disability, which I liked doing a lot at that time. I learned a whole lot about that from him. He did a lot of appellate work. He did a little bit of everything. He had me doing all of it. I didn't feel like an intern at all. I was, he was working me, cranking stuff out, meeting with clients. That was a great experience.
Was it, how was passing the bar? I've heard horror stories from people before.
So, the bar exam is hard, and they do this weird thing in law school where you can take, at the end of law school, before you graduate, they offer classes just on taking the bar exam. And you pay companies to give you these classes. And it's expensive. It's really expensive. And almost everyone does that. And I don't know why. I guess I'm a bit of a rebel. I refuse to do that. I thought, I went to law school. I'm not paying some other company thousands of dollars so they can teach me how to pass the bar exam. Surely I can pass the bar exam. So I did not take those classes. but I did buy materials for those classes from years past. And I studied those materials, and I studied on my own, and I practiced. And I think I was one of the last, we were one of the last years that, because there's two parts of the bar exam. One of them is multiple choice questions where you fill in circles, you know, just like the SAT and everything else. And the other part is a written. So they give you a fact pattern and they ask you questions, and you have to write like pages of your opinion of what the law, applying the law to that fact pattern. And we were one of the last people, maybe the last year, to do it by hand. We didn't type it. They've been typing them out forever now, but I had to write out pages and pages and pages. And you don't know what your score is. You just get a thing saying you passed. So I don't know if I barely passed or if I smoked it, but that's how it works. So, and it takes forever. You take the bar in July, and you don't get your. I got my results back October the 17th, 2007. So I remember that.
And there's something too, like if you don't pass, you can't. Is there like a waiting period or something?
I don't. Seems like I kind of remember. I mean, I didn't have to go through that, so I didn't. But it seems like you could take it again, and you know, you had to wait. They only give it twice a year, so you had to wait 6 months. The next time came up in January, February, whatever that was. And maybe if you failed it 2 or 3 times in a row, they would make you wait a chunk of time. Something like that.
Right. So
how did you feel after you? Were you confident after you took it, or were you?
I felt pretty good about it. Yeah. I mean, it was nerve wracking, but I was so afraid that I would fail it, and all my classmates would say, "We told you so. You should have took that class." That I studied like way harder than they did, because a lot of them took that class and just felt like because they took it, they were golden because we took the class. We were going. Well, I didn't have that insurance, that umbrella, so I went at it. I studied for the bar like a maniac for months, and I think I felt pretty good about it once I did.
So what happened after getting out of law school, after passing the bar?
I went back. We moved back to Oneida. I was married at that time, and me and my wife. She was pregnant with our first child when we moved back, and she started. Well, she was just ready to have the baby, and I started working with Leif Jeffers and Mark Strange. They were 2 attorneys that I had met while I was in law school, and I tell you the truth, I don't remember how I met them. And Leif's one of my best friends in the whole world now, but me and him got hooked up somehow, and we just hit it off, and me and him, Mark, got to be good friends, and I went into private practice with them. And while they actually had me working with them while I was studying for the bar exam, so I had my own office in their firm. And I would meet with clients and do work during the day and study for the bar at night. I did that every day for weeks and weeks and weeks. And they gave me a lot of good experience. I got to go to federal court with Leif, and he had some pretty big cases that he was working on that he let me participate in. That was great. And I started doing Social Security disability. And I had a lot of luck at that. I was good at it. And there was an attorney in Scott County by the name of Greg Leach, who's from here in Campbell, and he was very helpful to me in that. He did nothing but Social Security disability. And even though every case I got was really stealing a client from him, he didn't care. I mean, I was new, and he was great to me. I'll never forget that. So I worked with Mark and Leif for a few months, but that was a bad time to be in private practice. That was in 2007, going 2008.
Yeah.
That's when the housing market crashed. Everybody was broke. Everybody had problems and needed an attorney, and nobody had money to hire one. So you could work 24 hours a day, but not have anything to show for it. So it was a tough time. So Leif left and went to the district attorney's office, and in January of 2008, and then. In April, I got a call from Martha Yoakum, who was the public defender at the time, and this was in 2008. And I was at Mrs. Winters in the parking lot, and I had never met her. I had never talked to her, and I hadn't, put in an application. I didn't know anything about it. She called me and said, "Hey, I've got a job opening. I hear that you're a good attorney. Would you be interested in this?" And I said, "Maybe, yeah. Can you give me a day to think about it?" So I went home, talked to my wife, and the next day I accepted the job, and I started on May 1st of 2008.
So what caused you to accept? Because you talked about you wanted to do like your own practice and things like that. So what caused you to decide to go into the public defender's office?
Well, criminal defense was definitely my favorite part of my practice at that time. Defending, poor people against the government was, I don't know, it was just, I loved it. I thought it was the greatest thing ever. And I say government like they were evil. The the DAs that I was against at the time were great people that I worked with, and still are, and they're great folks. But I still seen it as, David and Goliath type of thing, because the state has all the resources in the world. They've got the police and usually the public and everybody behind them. And I'm walking into the guy, and all he got's me. So I don't know. I love the setup of it. And I had been to criminal court in front of Judge Sexton a lot by that time, and I thought the world of him. I thought Judge Sexton just did a phenomenal job. He was a really good judge, so I enjoyed being in his court. And something that I really liked about the public defender's office is it took the business aspect out of it. So when you're an attorney in private practice, you're working and trying to represent people and follow the law and get justice and all that stuff, but that's only part of it. I mean, the other part is you're trying to make a living. You've got bills to pay. You've got a copy machine with you have a lease on, and you've got all this. So it's money is the driving factor the entire time. I mean, it's a business. You're there to make money. You're trying to make a living, and that is driving everything you're doing. Is money, 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 money. The public defender's office, it allowed me to focus entirely on representing people without worrying about money at all. I didn't have to worry about it. I mean, you didn't get paid much. When I started off public defenders, I made very little money. But it came regularly. You didn't have to worry about it, and I could just completely forget about running a business and focus on representing my client and going to court. And I love that. It was a great fit for me. When I started off with working for Martha Yoakum, she sent me to Tazewell for the first few months, and I went to Claiborne County in front of Judge Estep, and he was great. I liked it there a lot. And then because the district covers 5 counties, she then moved me to Scott County in front of Judge Cotton. But I didn't stay there for too awful long. I was there, I don't remember how many months, and then she brought me to Campbell. And, I still filled in Fentress County and Union County, but she brought me to Campbell pretty early on. And I stayed in front of Judge Ayers and Judge Sexton. I worked with Charles Herman, who was, the former General Sessions judge here. He, after he had left the bench, he became an assistant public defender, and he and I worked together, and I did jury trials with him, and he was my mentor, and I looked up to him. I still do. Charles Herman was one of the greatest men I've ever met in my life, and he had a huge effect on me back then.
And can you talk about, because you had said, I think you said on election night that he was literally sitting next to you at your party. Could you talk a little about, is that like you are in contact with him still? Like, how did that end up coming together?
I consider Charles Herman, Judge Herman, part of my family. I mean, I love the guy. We ate lunch together all the time. Ever since he retired, and he's retired, it's been over 10 years ago now, we've just stayed in touch all the time. We'd always try to eat lunch at least once a month. He'd call and check on me, ask me how I was doing. I check on him, and we've always just been real close. And when I decided to run for office, because he'd been through it, he'd ran for judge, he'd been elected as judge, he'd ran and been beat. He knew the whole system and ups and downs of politics. And he's like, "Oh, you sure you want to do this?" I was like, "Yeah, I think I do." And he said, "Well, let me warn you something. Everybody's going to lie to you." I was like, "What do you mean?" He said, "Well, when I ran in 1990, that he lost the election, and from what I gather, I don't remember the numbers, that it wasn't too close. He lost by a healthy amount." He said, "In 30 years since that time, I haven't found one person in Campbell County that says they didn't vote for me." He said, so they're going to lie to you. People are going to look to you and say, "My family's going to vote for you." Everybody, and they're not. So just get ready for that. And I was like, "All right." But he was there with me through the whole campaign, and gave me a lot of good advice, and just stuck with me. And the night the results came in, we were at Manor House, and I've got a great picture from that that just brings all that emotion from that night back, and he's in it, sitting back at a table, and I sat with him at that table for a good chunk of that night. We're watching the results trickle in. So that was an amazing experience having him there with me.
So I'm interested from your perspective. Like obviously, like have you seen many like shows or movies or things like that depict the judicial system or the legal system? What's an example of a movie or a TV show that doesn't? It's not realistic at all, and then what's one that maybe is?
Yeah, is My Cousin Vinny accurate?
My Cousin Vinny.
That's my mom's an attorney, and that's one of her favorite movies.
More accurate than a lot of shows. Yeah, it's pretty crazy. We in law school, and when you go to legal conferences, they like to use little clips of movies and stuff. And My Cousin Vinny is one that is used constantly.
Yeah, I'm on the Bar Association's email list, and I saw they had a continuing legal education that's just watching My Cousin Vinny and talking about it.
Yeah.
But yeah, is there anything that like you see and you're just like, that's not how it is, something like that?
Most of it is that's not how it is. I don't know of one that seems, and I'll tell you why. Since I've been doing this for a long time, we kind of have a rule at home that I don't watch any legal stuff at all because it makes me feel like I'm at work. So I don't watch a lot of those shows. I've not seen
John Grisham novels or anything.
The one of his that I read was his one. He did one nonfiction book.
Yeah.
Called The Innocent Man. That's the only one I've ever read of his. So, but I have seen some of those movies. Yeah, no, that's all really far-fetched.
Yeah, I would imagine the biggest thing is probably just
Crazy.
The narrative structure of the law. Probably the legal system works a lot quicker in the span of a movie or a TV show than it actually does. And Eva, you know this in terms of like following some cases. And
yeah, well, I have trouble now watching those shows because they'll like arraign somebody and then start having a trial within a week, and I'm sitting here like, I've been waiting for some of these cases to go to trial for like 2 years.
Right, like Eva's been here for how long? About a year and a half or so,
Yeah.
more than that, and you're still going back to stories that Deidre wrote.
Yeah.
To get the original background of like what this is because it's still going on. But I don't know. That was something I was wondering.
Most of what you see on TV is just nonsense, and I swear if we do watch something, and I'm bad to pause it and say, oh, that's a bunch of crap. That ain't nothing like. And my girlfriend Nicole is like, we don't care. It's TV. Just let it go.
Right.
Hit play. We don't want to hear your explanation of how it really works. Just let it be TV.
You're like that Leonardo DiCaprio pointing at the TV screen meme.
We are bad to pause it for whatever we're watching at home. It takes us forever. My family, my kids, and my girlfriend, we love to pause it and just have long discussions. We know it takes us weeks to get through an hour episode of a show. It seems like terrible. My son the other day, when I was complaining about it, he's like, "Just accept it, Dad. This is who we are."
Could you talk a little bit about your family, like your parents and your son, everything like that?
Yeah, my mom and dad live in Oneida, and my dad works at the University of Tennessee. He's in the chemistry department. He's not a professor or anything, but he's the director of what's called the electronics shop. So, and I worked there when I was an undergrad with him. He got me a job working part-time. It's pretty neat because in the chemistry department, when most people think about that, they think about teaching chemistry to undergraduates. Well, really, in the chemistry department, that's part of it, but it's kind of the lesser thing they do. They have a lot of professors who do research and get grants to do research, and they have graduate students helping them. That's the majority of the chemistry department, and all of them have computers that run a lot of their experiments, and they have they build their own equipment, and they have some of the craziest equipment you've ever seen, stuff that I didn't know existed that they use for their experiments. And those machines break down and have to be repaired. And they have people on staff there that work on those machines, that work on the computers. You've seen the crazy scientist labs where they ain't lab really. It's got all kinds of glassware, like pipettes and tubes and all these things. Well, they make their own at the chemistry part. They have a glass blower that can make anything. So a professor or somebody will say, we need this. They'll go to the glass shop and create something new. If they need some kind of weird whatever apparatus. They have a machine shop downstairs, and they can take chunks of metal and shape them and drill holes in them and cut them to be whatever they need. And then they work on their computers as well. So he's got a staff of people who do all of those things. He's been there 30 years, and I guess he's close to retirement now. But I still love going over there and seeing all the crazy stuff they've got in the electronic shop and in the chemistry department. My mother works for a nonprofit called STAND, and she has a program through STAND called the Youth Service Learning Initiative, where she goes to the high schools and teaches classes to different groups at Scott High and Oneida about ending the cycle of poverty that we have in our area. And they have a board that's made up of students, and they do volunteer work, and she loves it, and that's her life. She really loves her students and her board, and they have meetings, and she works with them. That's been a very, very successful program that she does.
That sounds like some things that are close to your heart and what you want to do.
Yeah. She does. She's working with kids all the time. She tries to get into the high schools and just show them a different way. You know, some of us just get stuck in a paradigm of how things are in the world, and this isn't necessarily true, or what our role is in the world, or where our station is. And yeah, we need to not think about things. You know, you can do anything you want.
Take me through the whole. So like, how did you decide to run? Did you see the path to victory? Did you feel pretty good about it right away, or
No.
was it okay?
No, not at all. I felt like someone needed to run, and I really did feel like it was something I needed to do. I really didn't. Once I reached this one point, it's like people had mentioned it to me a few times, and I kind of said, no, I ain't doing that. But there was a seed planted in the back of my head that people wanted me to become the judge. Because I'd had a good career as an attorney. I've been successful in jury trials, and I had a lot of happy clients. And in the legal community, I was respected. I feel. I hope. I don't kind of feel silly saying that, but I think that was the case. So that they wanted me, some folks wanted me to run, and then just things happened in court, and it crossed, one particular day, it kind of crossed the line where I went home and said, I'm running for judge, and that was it. And we just, from that day forward, I just started planning and working, and I never questioned it after that day. And
How long ago was that?
That was early last summer.
Was that in Campbell County General Sessions?
Yes, I was in juvenile court the day that just hit me that it was happening. And I didn't know who else was going to run. I didn't know what my chances were, but I was going to try. And I knew at that point that if I didn't at least try, that I would regret it for the rest of my life, is how I felt. So I just didn't feel, once I crossed that line, I no longer felt like I had a choice, like it was happening. I was going to do it. And I didn't know that I would win. Matter of fact, there was another attorney that was in it. We had a three-way race, which is very difficult with an incumbent. And I announced in December that I was just pretty early, because we were waiting until January. But I announced early in December, and there was another attorney who announced that he was going to run, Daniel Forrester, who's from Campbell County. He's a very well-respected, good attorney, sharp guy, and I don't know how things would have turned out if he'd have stayed in the race. It would have changed things significantly, but he decided not to run at some point. He called me at home and said he had changed his mind. And that was before we had filed petitions, so it wasn't official yet. But no, I did not, especially with him in it. I didn't know that I would win at all. It wasn't a given thing by any stretch. I knew that I was fighting an uphill battle against an incumbent in a multi-candidate race.
What was the experience of running like where you haven't run for office before, so you're trying to figure out how to run for office for a position that's county-wide, so there's a lot of people to reach, and then also in a position that's sometimes difficult to explain to people, what a general sessions judge does, what juvenile court, does. So what was that like, trying to figure out how to run and how to explain it to people?
It was crazy. I mean, it was crazy. So when I was sitting there thinking about running for judge, what I was really thinking about was being judge. And, in my mind, I was ready for that. I'd been an attorney forever. I knew the law. I thought I could handle it. I'd been in the courtroom. I'd seen what the judges do. I thought, I think I can do this, and I think I'll do well. But running for judge and being a judge are two totally separate things. I was not prepared to run for judge at all. I mean, I did not know what I was getting into. So I just started reaching out to people, and over the course of the campaign, it was a combination of people who were already my friends, who went way, way above and beyond helping me. Because you can't run a campaign without a ton of help. You can't. No one can. Anybody who won a race had a ton of help, had a team of people behind them. And mine was first of all, it's your family. If you run for office, your family's running for office. And my family absolutely ran for office. It was with me every step of the way. My girlfriend Nicole was absolutely wonderful. I worked her to death. My mom and dad, for the last couple months, basically just moved in with us, and was out driving me while I was knocking on doors. I told my mom that she's 63. I'm sorry. She was like the Terminator. That if you dipped her in liquid nitrogen and shattered her into pieces, they would melt and she would reform and just start campaigning again. She had more energy than I did. It was nuts what they did. But I had a lot of my friends, and I had people I'd known for a while that helped me a lot in the campaign. Chad Sweat, Tub Kids, my friend Charles Honeycutt, and her sister Melanie, and her husband John. And then there were other people who I had never met before that reached out to me that just wanted to help for different reasons. They'd watched the debate maybe, or they had heard about me, or that I'd represented someone in their family, and they wanted to be a part of the campaign. And I had several people like that, and one of the biggest ones was a guy named Carl Blankenship. I'd met him in passing at a function months ago, and he came to my office, and he asked to see me. Well, that happened a lot. People come in off the street just want to see Bill Jones. And part of what my secretaries did was kind of ran interference to make sure, because I could only talk to clients and stuff, and I couldn't waste time just talking to whoever showed up. But for whatever reason, I said, sure, let him in. And I sit down and talk to him. And when it was over, he said, I'm going to help you in this election. I was like, oh, sure, thanks, buddy. Whatever. And he started calling me like every day. What are you doing? That's what he said every day. I talked to Carl. What are you doing now? And if I wasn't doing something he thought was right, he said, well, don't be doing, they no votes there. Go do something else. Go. And it got to the point, he called me every morning like at 8 o'clock. By 8 o'clock, I wanted to be doing something important, because when he called, I didn't want to disappoint him with what I was doing. So Carl worked so hard. I mean,
So you won because of Carl.
I absolutely won because of Carl. I mean, I won by 9 votes.
Right.
So if not for the help of many people, if it had not been for Carl Blankenship, I'd have lost bad. I mean, he worked tirelessly. Him and his wife Lee were wonderful, and he made me work hard. I mean, he did. He stayed on my case. And anytime, I tell you, that I was feeling down, because anybody that's a candidate knows the race, you go from being on a roller coaster up and down, up and down. You feel like you can't lose. You're on top of the world to you. Oh, this is awful. I can't win. I'm going to lose, and it's going to be off. At the end of it, you're on a pogo stick. I mean, it's just up and down, up and down, up and down. And sometimes you get down. It just happens. It happens to all the other candidates I talk to. It happened to all of us. If I spent an hour with Carl Blankenship, I was back on top by the end of that hour, because he just made me feel great. So you meet friends, and you need a lot of people like that. Ray Lawson was my treasurer. I've been friends with her for years. So you had this huge group, a team of people who just came together. We met at Manor House the first time that we had an organizational meeting, and we were fired up, and we went out of there, and everybody showed up to my events, to my rallies, and they did whatever I needed folks to do. They put signs up. They just anything I asked, they were there. If I had a booth, I had a booth at everything. It seems like every event. Campbell County is very, very social people. And in other counties, so that I had friends of mine that were running in district-wide races. That was all 5 counties in our judicial district. And Campbell County had more events and stuff to go to than the other 4 counties combined. I mean, there was something going on here every night. And we had a booth or a table, it just seems like constantly. And they took turns, you know. If I had a booth at some in the last 12 hours, people would come in shifts. It was beautiful. They were so good to me. I could never repay the folks that helped me on my campaign or not. But you really need that to win. So that was a great experience. The hardest part of that for me, one of the hardest things in the campaign, was asking for help. You know, you need that. And I'm not used to asking for help. I'm an independent guy. It was hard. Saying, hey, can you help? Can you volunteer Saturday?
Can you help me?
You got plans? Can you get a sitter? I really need you to be at this thing.
So when was the first Manor House? Why Manor House? Was it just a place to go?
I like Manor House. I'd been there a lot. The people were super friendly. It was in a good location in the middle of Jacksboro. They have a big kind of open area with lots of seating. So we just thought it would be a good fit. And I didn't know if they'd let me do it. You know, sometimes businesses are reluctant. They don't want. And for good reason.
Right. Somebody walks in the door and they're like,
right. You don't want to get tied to the candidate.
I'm not a Bill Jones person. I'm out of here.
I'm for the other guy. I'll get my coffee somewhere else. But they weren't like that. They were super nice to us and open, and they even put our shirts on. And I gave shirts to the staff and the owners, Mandy and Lee. They were wonderful. And we had a big thing there that night, and we decided later that when we heard the results, we wanted to be in that same place. We'd started there, we wanted to end there.
Right. So when was the organizational meeting? Was that like back in December or January?
No, it was a little later than that, but I would say February, March. I think it's a blur.
Right.
I mean this sincerely. When campaigning was a blur.
Right.
I was getting up every morning super early, working until late with phone calls, text messages, Facebook. Facebook becomes a part-time job. Because, I mean, it really
does. We know that.
It gets where you hate it. You got to keep that content up. You got to watch, you know, what people post and comment. Right. Sometimes you get some pretty crazy stuff, and you got to keep an eye on those kind of things. And it became a blur. So I had trouble. I had trouble telling. So I took a lot of time off at the end. I had saved up a ton of vacation, and I took a bunch of it before the election, and I couldn't tell you what day of the week it was.
What a vacation!
Yeah, yeah. My kids kind of got stuck this year. We didn't go anywhere.
Could have gone to Disney World and said they were campaigning.
Yeah. My son said that he's like, Dad, I'm going back to school Monday. And all I've done is work all summer long. I was like, well, I'm a judge, so you got that right. That's good.
Did you like the dunking booth? You had a couple of those.
Yeah, the Dunkin' booth. It was fun. It was fun. It was hot that day. The Dunkin' booth, you gotta be careful. You can get hurt in those things.
Right.
I think a few of us got bruised. You gotta.
I heard you got an injury from a sign earlier in the campaign.
Oh, that's right.
Oh my gosh, that was a bad day. So, Chad Sweat, who I go to church with at New Horizon, like I said, he was a good friend of mine. Guy campaigned like an animal everywhere he went. He's campaign. So we were going to go on Sunday. We knew we should be working on Sunday, but we were just going to put up a few signs. We thought that didn't really count somehow. I don't know. And so we go to put the very first sign up, and we had a post. We use these steel T-posts that you put up like barbed wire fencing with. And that's what people do their signs differently, but a lot of folks, that's a pretty common way of you just zip tying your signs to these T-posts. So you take your post driver, it's a big heavy thing, it's a big pipe, and when you smash it into it, and it drives it into the ground. It's got handles on both sides. And on the very first post, on the very first sign, the ground's super hard. I'm beating it hard with this post driver, and I took it up too high, and it came completely off the post. And when I went to slam it back down, it didn't go into the post driver. It hit the edge, and it rotated down on top of my head and absolutely cracked my head open.
Oh my gosh.
And Chad's looking down at the ground, and he says, "Why'd you stop?" Because he didn't see what had happened. And I was like, I think I hurt myself. And he looked up and said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "I don't know." And blood just starts pouring down both sides of my
Oh my
face.
gosh.
Oh, it was awful.
Did
It
you have
was
to get stitches or anything?
Well, I went to urgent care, and
You played it off on Facebook like it was like, oh, I tripped on a banana peel.
it was
Yeah, I thought
awful.
you just kind of hit
It looked
yourself
like
with the
a murder
size.
scene. It was so bad. I wouldn't, because I was at someone's house and they weren't there. They told me I could go put a sign in their yard, and there was a great location, so I put one of the bigger signs. That's why we're using these posts. And I didn't want to walk across her nice, pretty white driveway, because I'm just pouring blood everywhere. I thought, I'm going to stain her driveway. I don't want to do that. So I had him go get me one of my campaign shirts that I had to hand out in the back, and I'd take one and I'd stick it to my head and kind of get the blood stopped. And it was a Sunday, so like most places are closed, but there's one of the clinics is Seventh-day Adventist, and they're open on Sundays because Saturday is their Sabbath. So I thought, well, I'll go there. So I go there. Sure enough, they're open, and they glue my head back together. And the lady gluing my head back together says, "Oh, I tell them the story. It's like you may know my dad. My dad's Shane Sexton." And I was like, "Yeah, I know him a little bit. I've only spent my whole career in front of him, so that was cool." Judge Sexton's daughter Sydney glued my head back together.
Judge Sexton saved you in the end.
Yeah. Yeah, he gave me a pretty hard time about it. And I've got a bald spot now on my head. I got a huge scar. And and when I get my hair cut, every time they say, "This looks really bad up here," I said, "Well, just comb it over and cover it up." My hair did not go back.
You saw Shane Sexton join Twitter recently.
Did he really?
Right, yes, you
I
did.
didn't know that.
Yeah, he told me that now that he's retired, he'll try to figure out social media, which I don't know if you need to do that. I don't know if it's worth it, but
Yeah, he started a Facebook page during the campaign. I hate to see him go. He was a really, really good judge. I've tried a bunch of jury trials, and most all of them were in front of him. He's always been fair. He's the perfect example of what a judge should be. I hope to. If I'm half the judge he was, I think I'll be a big success.
Is there like what you talked about at Rotary about the bail? Like, are there things about the court process? I mean, we hear different things, and like Eva, for example, like you're always telling me about things where people are like looking into the court process and like, oh, this is important, and they're like, oh, actually, no, this is the important thing, and it's like you have to like know what you're looking into before you really see it. Are there things about common misconceptions about the court that people have in terms of, like you were talking about the bail at Rotary, in terms of like the purpose of bail?
Yes, bail's a good one, and I can give you other examples. But like we spoke at Rotary, bail. People get really angry at the judge when someone makes bail because they think, well, that person committed the crime and they deserve to be in jail. But the reality, bail is to make sure someone returns to court. It's not to punish someone. I mean, when you are charged with a crime, you are presumed to be innocent. And the only reason we make people put up a cash bail is to guarantee that they come back to court. And most people use a bail bondsman, so they pay 10%. And what that bail bondsman does is put a piece of paper swearing that if this person doesn't come back to court, we'll go get them. And we'll either give you a bunch of money, the court a bunch of money, or we'll go and get a bounty hunter or somebody will get this person and physically bring them to court. So bail is all about coming to court. But people get angry and they think that people who are accused of a crime deserve a punishment, so they shouldn't get out. But in reality, if you're convicted, conviction of the crime comes later. So there's two attorneys involved in the case, the prosecutor and defense attorney. And the prosecutor prosecutes the case, and at the end of the day is trying to get a certain sentence, which is the punishment, which may or may not include jail time. But if a prosecutor thinks the person deserves jail time, they'll try to get jail time, and usually do. And then the person goes to jail and serves however much time that is. But the purpose of bail is not to punish someone. It is just to ensure they return to court. So it is something I wish more people understood, and they would be less upset with the judge for setting bail, because we're required to do that. I mean, it's not like it's an option or it's your opinion. I think they deserve to get out. No, I mean, the statutes and the Constitution of the state of Tennessee have that you have a right to a reasonable bail, and then this is how it's to be set. And you look at factors like how long have you lived in Campbell County, or do you live in Campbell County? Do you have family here? Do you have a job? All of these things that are factors that they have decided play a role in determining your likelihood of showing back up.
Are there other things that like people kind of look at and maybe play up and they're not as important, or play down and they're very important? Things like that.
Well,
I feel like sentencing usually is a big one.
yeah, and sentencing is very, very different in
Yeah.
general sessions court versus criminal court. So if someone is convicted after a jury trial, there's a huge sentencing hearing where Judge Sexton or Judge Walden now, our new criminal court judge, would get a pre-sentence investigation, and they hear, it's kind of like a mini trial, but it's not a trial whether they did it or not. It's a trial to see how much punishment they deserve. And depending on what you're convicted of, if it's a Class C felony and you got no priors, you're looking at 3 to 6 years. That could be on probation, it could be in prison, or it can be a combination of some jail time followed by probation. In Sessions Court, we only take misdemeanors to the end. I can only accept a misdemeanor plea, and that's it. And all of those are agreements between the district attorney's office and the defendant and their attorney. So the general sessions judge doesn't really have much ability to sentence people to things, unless someone just pled blind to a crime and let the judge set the punishment, which just doesn't happen very often. Because if they disagree, say that the two parties, so in criminal court, if the two parties don't agree, you have a jury trial, and then you have a sentencing hearing. Well, if the two parties don't agree in Sessions Court, they have a preliminary hearing, and it gets sent to the grand jury, and it's out of my jurisdiction now.
Yeah.
So the general sessions judge doesn't get to set the punishment for misdemeanor offenses. Now, the one time the sessions judge does have a lot of power is if a person's put on probation and then they violate probation. Now, you do have much more ability to pick how much time someone serves or make them serve all of their time. But even then, the maximum you can get for a misdemeanor sentence is 11 months, 29 days. And the law says that, generally most people get 25% good behavior credit, so they're serving 9 months in jail in reality.
Well, one thing that I thought was so interesting that you said on election night was when you said that, all things being equal, you prefer to be a lawyer over a judge. Like, you have more fun being a lawyer.
This wasn't a goal of mine. I do think it's important. I'm very glad I won, and I'll do absolutely the best that I can. Mm-hmm. But being an attorney is fun.
Yeah.
Having a jury trial is one of the scariest things you'll ever do. I mean, I multiple times have went to a courtroom and sat next to someone at a table like this in front of a jury and argued against a DA who had police and just what seemed like infinite resources. And if the jury comes back guilty, if we lose, they're going to prison for the rest of their life. Mm-hmm. And I've been on both sides of those verdicts. I've had cases where they're found guilty of everything, and we try our best, and they're found guilty, and they go to prison forever. And there's people who are in prison now who will be there until they die, that I was their attorney sitting next to them. And it's a very heavy thing, and it's extremely stressful. But I've had the opposite happen too. I've had people who were facing life sentences sit next to me, and the judge would call, because there's such high emotion in some of these cases, call in a bunch of police officers to kind of be all over in the courtroom to make sure families don't fight and bad things don't happen. And I've had an officer with cuffs in his hands ready to smack on my client and take him downstairs for forever, and a lady and a jury stand up and say, "We, the jury, find the defendant not guilty." And it's the craziest. You can't explain what that's like. I mean, just tears are shed, hugs. It's an amazing experience, and jury trials are what our entire system is based on. Even though a small percentage of the cases actually go that far, it's the threat of the jury trial, knowing that's where this is going, that causes us to negotiate the way we do. Both sides try to figure out, what's the likelihood of conviction? Can the state win? Are they going to lose? Is there problems? And we kind of know which cases are good and which cases are bad, and the DAs know that too. I mean, everybody seems to, we've all done it. But you never know for sure. What I tell people is, when juries go back into a room, they shut the door. There's no camera, there's no microphones. You have no idea what they're talking about, what they're focusing on. And when they come out and read that verdict, they don't have to give a reason. I mean, not that they don't have to, they don't. They don't tell you, we find you guilty because. You just know that they all voted back there and found the defendant guilty or not guilty or whatever. And I tell people that no matter how good your case is, you can always lose. And no matter how bad it is, you can win. I've lost cases I should have won, and I've won cases I should have lost, for sure. I've been shocked both ways. You just don't know.
But you were saying on election night that even though, you love being a trial lawyer, you felt like you would rather, and I love that analogy that you gave where it's like, you're playing, when you're a trial lawyer, you're playing the game, you're one of the hitters.
Yeah.
And then the judge is more the umpire.
Yes. I like to play ball.
Yeah.
I like the action. I want to be the guy standing down there giving a closing statement in a murder trial. I mean, that's why I went to law school. I love it. And it's something I've done very well at, and I feel like I'm good at. And I'm going to miss that terribly. The idea. So I wanted my kids to see me try a case. My children, my girlfriend Nicole has come to some of my jury trials, and she's watched me. She's watched two, I think, beginning to end. And Eva, you know that sometimes jury trials go from one extreme to the other. They go from the most boring things in the world where you can't stay awake to the most exciting to the point you can't stand it.
I'll be falling asleep for a whole day, and
Right.
then the next morning I'm tweeting something every 5 minutes to try to keep people updated. So it's really
It goes from one extreme to the other. And she came and sit and watched. One was like a 2-day trial, and the other one was just a 1 day maybe. But I won both cases, so I said Nicole's my good luck charm. But my kids had never.
More.
Yeah, I should have brought it all up. I always wanted my kids to sit and watch a trial, and we had one set that they were going to come watch. I was going to take them out of school at the end of last school year to sit and watch a jury trial I was going to do. And just a few days before the trial was to start, someone come up with a witness, and the prosecution filed a motion to continue, and it got moved, so they never got to see me try a case. So I do hate that they never did get to see that.
So you were talking about this at Rotary too, but for those voters that come mid-September, they're like, hey, why hasn't he overhauled every single thing yet?
Right.
Could you talk a little about the transition period? Because a lot of these cases, they've already, been set for times
Sure.
when you'll be
Yeah, I mean, today's Thursday. They had criminal sessions court today. They had sessions court today, and many of these cases would have been reset until September, October, November, and so the docket is already kind of set for that time. And on top of that, I just want to be somewhat cautious that I want to go into this, and when I take the bench September 1st, not make a bunch of drastic changes yet. I've got a lot of ideas and things that I want to do that we can do right off the bat, but any drastic changes, I want to wait. I want to be on the bench for a while, get a feel for it, and then if we change the docket completely, if we change what days of the week we hear which type of cases, we'll probably start that in January. And that way, as we're setting case, if we're in November and we're setting a case for 2 months out, we can put it on our new schedule. I like to have a time docket, or however we end up doing it. I met yesterday with a bunch of people from the courthouse, defense attorneys, DAs, bailiffs, clerk's office, and I told them I wanted to talk about the procedures for court. And I think most of them came thinking I was going to hand out, here's a packet with all my new rules and what we're going to do. And it was the opposite. I said, tell me what you all want to see. Tell me, what changes you would like to see happen. How do you think it can be improved? And I want to hear from everybody that's in the system, because they've all been doing it a long time. Like our clerks, Bobby Van's office does a great job. Alicia Collins, who covers Sessions Court, has been there, my entire career that I've been here. She knows, she's brilliant when it comes to this stuff. So not talking to her and asking her opinion would be ridiculous. It'd be a huge mistake. She's just a wealth of knowledge on how court should run and can run.
I think Debbie Farmer at Rotary was a big fan of the time docket you were talking about.
I think a time docket makes a lot of sense. Right now we set all our cases for 1 o'clock or 9 o'clock, and we may have 50 cases set for 9 o'clock. Well, we know for a fact there's absolutely no way we can hear 50 cases at one time. So we know there's going to be a stack of 50, and we're going to start working on them. And the truth is, whoever's at the bottom of that stack probably won't get their case heard even that morning. It may be late in the afternoon. So I would like to take, if we've got a stack of 75 cases, cut them up into pieces and set some at 10, some at 11, some at, well, not 12, we do lunch, but 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, whatever. And keep it grouped in like cases. So some case, what they're set for. So some cases are set for arraignment. People are making arraignments their first appearance in court. You can have an attorney appointed if you can't afford one, or your attorney shows up with you if you've hired one. You're told what your charges are. It's just part of the process. And I would like to do all those at one time.
So that's a difference, right? Right now it's alphabetical? Is that
Right now
Right now, I thought it was alphabetical.
Well, we have a sign out. It's during COVID. We tried to follow that some.
Yeah.
In reality, it's been kind of random. People come in at 9, and some of them are told at 9, you probably should come back at 1, and they leave. And it makes it really difficult for people to plan their day and their jobs and picking their kids up from school. And I would like to see some more order to it.
So would, I guess a little inside baseball, but is it how Judge Sexton does his docket where
Yes.
he starts with one thing, moves on, something like that, but with specific times? Because I know that because he'll start arraignments first and move on to status checks, and so something like that.
In that sense, yes.
Yeah.
In that it would be, I would like to do arraignments first from like 9 to 10, and then maybe do status cases that aren't set for a disposition necessarily, but we're just checking on something, and then move on to our hearings and actually have our hearings. It is hard to compare criminal and sessions courts. They're different in this way. In criminal court, the attorneys do they do all of their work between court dates. So you're only showing up on the day to either to argue to the judge or to tell him where you're at in the case. You're making an announcement. Sessions court is a little more chaotic, and we have it constantly. And this is true of every county. It's not special to Campbell. Much of the work in Sessions Court is done on that day in court.
Right.
So the attorneys are talking to their clients in the back rooms, they're talking to the DAs, they're negotiating, they're going back and forth. You don't do that in criminal court. So if you're going to reach an agreement in criminal court, you do it 2 weeks before the court date. But it's very common, I say the vast majority of the time, if you reach an agreement with the DA, offense attorney does, they do it that day, on the day, and then they write up the plea and take it all in one swoop. So it's definitely, by necessity, a little more different, a little more chaotic, I guess is one way of saying it, but there still needs to be order to it, and I think we can keep people there less time if we have it spaced out.
What are some things that you feel like you'll do right away, that you'll be able to do right away? And then what are those things that you'll probably not institute until January?
The things I want to do right away is kind of change the culture in court, the feeling. I don't know. I don't think you all have been in Sessions Court.
I have a couple times.
Well, it's something I said during the campaign. I ain't saying this to be ugly. I really ain't. But anyone who's been there can tell you this. It was kind of a toxic atmosphere, and no one wanted to be there, and no one should want to be in court. But we have court for a reason, and everyone's there because they have a problem, and that's a bad thing. But the court system itself, what we do, shouldn't make it worse. I wanted it to be, as a public servant, I want people when they come in the courtroom to be treated well, with respect, and to take just the temperature in court down a little bit, where I don't know, it's hard to put into words, I guess, but I definitely want to change the atmosphere in court to where people feel more comfortable. And when I say people, I'm not just saying all people who commit crimes. I mean everybody, victims, witnesses, police officers, in juvenile court. I just want to talk to people in a different tone. When we take someone's kids away, that's a very, very difficult thing to do. And there's two ways of doing it, I guess. One is you can be mean about it and say, you've done all these awful things and we're taking your kids away, and it may be true. But I want to build people up. If I take someone's children away, a lady, you're got a mother in front of me. As a defense attorney, I've seen this happen many times. Okay, I've represented women, and if you talk to women who are in recovery, they will all tell you the worst day of their life, the rock bottom of their addiction, is the day they lost their children. That is a turning point. It's a critical moment. I've heard it over and over and over again, and you will see. I would see that at that moment, it was very common for a woman to leave court after being talked bad to or just whatever happened there, and think my child was the one thing that kind of kept me from going too far, going crazy. I know I was using, but blah, blah, blah. And then they would just go out and go crazy. I mean, they'd get their hands on all the drugs they could, and they would just go off the rails, and bad things would happen. I know that that's a possible outcome when I take someone's children. I want to build them up and say, look, I hate this has happened to you. This isn't punishment for you. This isn't punishment for your child. Everyone in this room wants you to do well. We have a plan for you to get your child back, but you have to work with us. Please work with us. We've got all these resources. We got things we can do to get you. You're in a bad way. We're not judging you. You're not a bad person, but you are in a bad way, and we've got to fix it. Work with us, and you will get your child back. And give them hope that if they do the right thing, that's the outcome, and know that we're on their side and want to see them do good. I mean, I know that's a weird thing to say, but I want to change the attitude and the way people are talked to and treated, because it has a huge effect on folks. How you get talked to in a courtroom really sticks with people.
I think we probably got to wrap up because I got to head to Jellicoe for the
Yes.
city council meeting soon.
Okay, so we'll make one final question is, what are some of, well, you were talking about the docket too. Are you looking at maybe hoping to shrink the time that it takes to go through that docket, and are you looking at different days to have it? Because right now it's what, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday?
So right now, Monday we do civil matters, which could be divorces, lawsuits, things like evictions. Tuesdays and Thursdays are general sessions criminal matters all day long, and then Wednesdays juvenile court. And right now Fridays are open for anything during the week that a hearing may need to be had that may take a long time, and we don't want to have it on a day that's going to ruin the docket for the other day. They'll move it to Friday so that the docket isn't too disturbed on the other day. So Fridays are open. I'm open to moving those days, but I have no intention of moving anything at this time.
Mm-hmm. But you were saying some things in Rotary about like how like maybe not full days, maybe like a half a day or something like that. Once you get the docket shrunk, if possible.
Yes, I mean that's the way it used to be years ago. We would have one full day of criminal on Tuesdays, and then on Fridays we would do traffic tickets, arraignments on misdemeanor citation things. And it was done in a half a day. So we did a day and a half of court instead of 2 full days. And there was some structure to it. So if we can get back to there, I would like that. But right now we have a whole bunch of open cases. The docket's kind of swelled up. One thing I could do right off the bat, I want to start shrinking dockets by closing cases that have been reset many, many, many times, doing away with some of the status reviews we do in some cases. For just court costs and things like that. I mean, the clerk collects court costs. They have ways of doing that. The court doesn't need to be involved. In juvenile court, there's definitely many juvenile cases that can be closed. So that's one thing I want to do right out of the bat is try to close the number of open cases.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Robbie. Thanks,
the new soon-to-be General Sessions Judge in Campbell County, Bill Jones. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. I've really enjoyed it.